Welcome everybody, and here in this video I'm going to be showing you how to make a beautiful little pair of butterfly slippers for our medium art doll. Will suit any medium art doll where you use Pinocchio's size feet or the deer size feet, Bambi size feet. It's a beautiful little, very easy to make slip on, and it allows you to add some gorgeous little details there. You can embellish them as much or as little as you like. So let's see what we're going to need. We are going to need a shoe top, which is cut from felt with your fusible woven interfacing applied. And then we have a lining piece which goes on the inside. Your lining piece is cut from felt with fusible webbing applied. That just allows us to fold it over and fuse it into place, and we get that really lovely neat finish, and you see that nice colour inside the shoe. So I'm going with my little colour scheme for my Bambi doll. And then we need a sole, we need a base for the shoe. I always keep that a natural colour, it just helps with the realism. That is also just interfaced felt. And then of course we've got our two little butterfly pieces for detailing. I've cut those from felt with fusible webbing applied because it makes the felt stronger. We're not going to use it for actually fusing. It makes the felt stronger and it gives you nice sharp clean edges, and it will stay that way. Also, any little trims that you like, I'm just going to be using a few little beads just to center that butterfly. So our first step is simply to remove our backing paper from our lining piece. We're going to put right sides together and line up that center section there. So you've got center marks on both of your pieces. You can line those up and you'll find that it will fit perfectly in that front section, and you'll have some space there. That's for your seam allowance at the back. So what I like to do is I like to overcast this piece into place first, and then I will sew that one on the machine just with a 4mm seam allowance, and then we can turn that one through. Once you have that stitched into place, we're just going to turn that through and fold the facing to the inside. And because we've got that fusible webbing on the facing piece, we're going to be able to roll out those seams and we're going to be able to press it into place. So I like to pull it back a little from the seam line because I actually want to reveal a little bit of that blue. So I pull it back a little. So once you've got it all rolled out nice and flat, you can take it to the iron and you can press this into place, and it's going to fuse perfectly to your top layer. Make sure you use a hot iron and a protective cloth. So that has my facing pressed into place. Now while we have this piece nice and flat, we're going to add our detailing here. Now you can add to this detailing any way you like. You could add all sorts of little bits of trinkets and so on, but I'm just going to center mine. Those two pieces, remove the backing paper of course. I'm going to line that up right in the center. I'm just going to have it sit just as I have with this one. I want to see a little bit of the top of the shoe, and I'm going to make sure it's centered, and I'm just going to stitch through all of those layers 2 times, and I'll just use a blue to match my butterfly. You can see that by stitching the center there, it makes those wings pop up, and that sits up so beautifully from the top of your shoe. So now I'm just going to add my details, which are just a few little beads that I'm going to stitch down the center, just as I did with this one, just using my extra strong thread. As I said, you could add any sorts of additional little antennae, that sort of thing. And just remember, anything that you want to add to your shoe, top shoe section, it's best to do it now. So if you wanted to decorate the sides of your shoe, go ahead and do that now. So I'm going to get those little beads stitched into place, and then we will start to construct this little shoe. I have those beads in place now, and so now we're going to put our right sides together and we're going to stitch that center back seam. I will overcast mine first so that everything stays nice and even, and just stitch your seam to line up with your facing line here, and I do sew that one 2 times. If you have used an overcasting stitch on that back seam, remove it now so that we can finger press that seam nice and open and flat. And now we're going to add our sole of our shoe, and you've got marks on your pattern piece. So I'm going to start with the heel, put my pin in at my seam allowance and straight through the back of the heel. Straight through that seam there, and then we're going to do the same with the front. Match up your center front markings. I can actually pin that one the normal way because the front of the shoe is quite flat. Now when you're pinning this one in, be careful to make sure to flip those little butterfly wings back so we don't catch them in our sewing. Again, I can pin that one flat, cross over to the other side, make sure those are tucked in as well. Just exactly the same as pinning in a foot pad, which we're going to do right the way around. You can see that that will fit beautifully. And then I'm just going to overcast that one into place. Now, most of this one you can sew on the machine because it is quite flat at the front, but I do hand stitch with a stab back stitch, just that back curve into place. Our final step, of course, is just to turn that little shoe through to the right side, and do make sure that you roll out all of those seams, and you should have a nice rounded front there. A nice rounded heel. So how easy are they? And the perfect base pattern to create so many different designs. They do slip on your doll's foot absolutely perfectly. And if you are making your doll in felt, which most of us are, the felt to felt holds very, very well. But you can imagine what you could do with the front of this shoe. All sorts of different designs. So now let's make a beautiful fabric butterfly. We'll have a brooch pin on the back, which allows us to pin it to any of our art dolls. It's a really simple design, and I think you're going to find it really useful for accessories. So let's have a look at what we'll need to make our little fabric butterflies. Now they're very simple to put together. I've got my first one made here, and they are made out of felt fabric. So what I call felt fabric is a piece of your normal quilting cotton fused to a piece of felt with your fusible webbing, and then we cut out a rectangle. Now this one is 13 centimeters by 9 centimeters. You can make them smaller or larger, just keep to those ratios. So if you're going to add 2 centimeters to your long edge, add 2 centimeters to your short edge as well, and you'll keep those dimensions right. So this is a really great flexible type of fabric to use where we don't want to have, where we're going to have sort of a raw edge and we don't want to turn anything through, because making them this way, they're not too bulky. So what I do like to do though, because we're making this for an art piece, I blanket stitch the entire outside edge first. So I've got one here that I've done, and I've already sewn that blanket stitch all the way around, and I'm using black on the underside. You only see a little bit of that colour turned over, and I do want that little bit of black showing. So that's all done and it's ready to go. Super simple to put together. We're going to be adding just a little brooch clip on the back. We can hot glue it on or we can stitch it on. Totally up to you. And we also need 2 small buttons to fold down those bottom wings. And on this one, I'm going to be using a slightly larger button in that blue, so keeping to all of my colours. And I'm also going to be adding some little antennae to both of them. Very easy to do, slipping them in the back there. So I like to use just a regular bobby pin, which I just snip the end off, which then gives me those two pieces. And you can use the straight edge or you can use the crimped edge, whichever you like. I'm probably going to use two of the little crimped edges, and they're going to be just hot glued in behind, and that's going to give us that lovely little antenna look. So you need your hot glue ready. So let's start, and it's really just all about folding with this one. So once you've got your rectangle, the first thing we're going to do is take it to the iron, and we are going to fold it and press it perfectly in half, making sure you're absolutely matching everything up. So give that a good press. So our next fold is to fold it in half again, and here's where we really try and make sure that everything stays matched up. We're going to meet those edges and make sure everything is lined up, and we're going to really press this fold here. So that's our second fold done and pressed. Now you want to hold on to the top left hand corner and pull this one out, and you're going to create a triangle and line it up with the center line there. And you want to make sure that this is as even as you can make it. We're working with a fairly thick fabric, so there's going to be a few variables, but finger press that all together. And then we're going to hold on to all of that, and we're going to flip it over. So now, while you're holding on to that bottom corner, we're going to do the same thing, and we're going to flip that one over, and we're going to create another triangle on the opposite side, keeping those edges together. It is just about holding it all together as you're doing this, and we're going to create another triangle on the other side. So again, trying to keep this all nice and even, and we're going to finger press that all together. If it helps you to put a couple of little clips in it, by all means go ahead and do that. Now the next step is going to help you keep it all together. So I'm going to hold on to all of that. Try to make sure that your edges are even. So work with that until your top edges are even. Pop a couple of clips in if you like, either side. And what we're going to do now, I will even that up. You need to leave a little space in between. We're going to stitch on the machine straight through all of the layers from the top here right down to this point, and that's just going to secure it all. So I do that 2 times. So my next step, now that that's stitched, everything's held together now, we're going to take the top right hand corner and we're just going to pull it down to just the base here. We're creating the bottom of the wing, and you can see when we pop that out, that gives us that lovely curve to the wing. I just like to pop a clip in there to hold that for now while I pull down. In the same way, I just pull down the other side and do exactly the same thing. So I'm going to pull that round, match it up, just pop that curve in, and you've got that lovely turnover of that wing. You do want to make sure that they're lined up the same either side. I hope you can see that. And that's given us that lovely butterfly shape. So you can make this with just double felt, will work as well, made up in the same way. Some people make them up just in fabric, and they create their 2 pieces of fabric and they sew them together, turn it through. But I find this gives you a much sharper finish, and they make beautiful brooches actually, and you can do all sorts of embroidery on them if you like. But you can see there that that's held lovely, and we've got our beautiful butterfly shape. So my next step is simply to secure those wings in place, those lower wings, with a button on either side, just sewing through all of the layers like I've done here. So there we go, that has my second butterfly all done. Now you'll find that at the back here, because you've stitched there, you've got the perfect little spot to tuck in those little antennae behind, and it does make the job a whole lot easier. And it's just a matter of finding how long you want them to be and how close together you want them to be, and just hot gluing them into place. It's a lovely finish. And also I will go ahead and I will hot glue on that little pin, the brooch pin at the back, and I will do the same with my other one. So there we go, our two beautiful butterflies all done, ready, and you can pin them onto your art doll anywhere. So I'm going to pop one on my doll's shoulder and one on her wrist. Very sweet little accessory, and of course those gorgeous little shoes all ready to go. I think you're going to find these very, very useful.